run the unlikely road to the Players' Championship. Can he finish the deal? It's Caleb Scherer on the right on Affinity. He's against Donovan Lachney on Burn. So Lachney will be on the play and declaring his intentions. You see a smirk there. Mountain Lava Spike go.
It's beautiful.
After your own heart. Now, when I've seen the Affinity set, the Burn side of this, what I always am hoping is that my opponent plays he plays no more than 4 cards on the first turn. If he does this, turn 1 drum go, I feel like I have a chance.
The biggest issue that Affinity has in the matchup is they can't really interact with what Burn is doing. Affinity kills much faster, I think, on average, and a lot of Burn's creatures are poor in the matchup because Affinity is so good at blocking. But if you're all on Lava Spikes and their draw's a little on the slow side, there's not a whole lot they can do.
All right, well, so Donovan picks up a Goblin Guide. It's no turn 1 Goblin Guide, but turn 2 will still be good for 2 damage. Knocks Caleb down to 15, does give him a Blink Moth Nexus in the process.
You look at Lachney's hand, the leftovers are very good. Searing Blaze, Boros Charm, Lightning Bolt, and another land. That's about as good as your hand can get in this spot.
Yeah, no, Searing Blaze is important because it's one of his few ways to interact with something like Vault Scourge.
It's the best card Burn has in the matchup by a lot. It's even better than some of the post-board cards like Destructive Revelry. It's just the best thing going on.
All right, well, for Caleb, Signal Pest will be the first play. We'll just see, let's get a spell count going on. Another Springleaf Drum. Signal Pest will make a mana off one of the drums to cast another Signal Pest. That one will use another drum to finish the turn on, and this is the dangerous one, Vault Scourge.
But we know Lachney already armed with a Searing Blaze here.
Yeah, so actually, as long as this guy never connects, the fact that Caleb took 2 to play Vault Scourge is only helping Donovan.
Yes. Get a Bolt here. That knocks Caleb down to 10. Goblin Guide attack is 8. Searing Blaze is 5. You have Boros Charm left over. A lot of draw steps to find the last point of damage because Scherer's not really up to anything. Another copy of Searing Blaze to draw. Pairs very nicely with the fetch land. Don't have to break it right now. That's 2 landfall triggers. That's how you draw it up.
And you like it, that Lightning Bolt going upstairs to Caleb. He's at 10. So land, Searing Blaze, Vault Scourge is dead. Caleb's at 7. Swing from Goblin Guide. Another Blink Moth drawn. Caleb at 5. Looks like 1 turn away.
Yep.
However, though, Ink Moth Nexus on the battlefield. I'm counting artifacts here. Does he have? Caleb could do it. Well, it would take a lot.
Cranial Plating plus.
Yeah. Or there's concern at least.
Well, Lachney's at 20, and he's drawing next turn to any 1-mana spell or any land for a kill. So he's got to get it done this turn because next turn Lachney is drawing as a huge favorite towards the kill.
Thought Cast is the draw for sure. Draws an Etched Champion and a Memnite. Gets a Blink Moth Nexus. He's gotten a pair of those from Goblin Guide. Memnite is a blocker. That one's free. Artifacts right now, he has 6 in play. You're starting to count, you know? It's unlikely he can do it all this turn.
Yeah, and I mean, as Champion's a really nice one to have because it locks up next turn. He has to get so many artifacts into play that it seems unlikely to me, but at least he's connecting for sure.
So uses 1 drum to cast S Champion and passes the turn. You see Cranial Plating, Blink Moth Nexus, and Arcbound Ravager left in his hand. For Donovan, he draws the land. It's Sacred Foundry, and you're telling me this is going to do it.
This is the lock. He's got Boros Charm, and he's got Searing Blaze in hand. That's why I liked Lachney not sacrificing the fetch land at the end of the turn, because the land's a lethal draw for him, and he doesn't want to thin that out.
All right, Searing Blaze, 3 to the Signal Pest, 3 to Caleb. Here's a fetch, and Boros Charm should do it. He shows it to Caleb, and we're on to game 2. Donovan Lachney with Burn takes game 1 off Affinity in a steal.
Well, those are the kind of draws that you beat at Affinity, which is the first 2 turns are set up. And that's what Scherer had there. He was going to start creating some real pressure on turn 4 rather, but the first 2 turns just didn't interact. Didn't get any pressure on the board, didn't block, and that's not going to cut it against a good burn draw.
Yeah, looking at it from a racing's point, Lachney had a turn 4 kill, and it looks like Caleb actually had a turn 4 kill of his own, but Caleb was on the wrong side of the die roll, and some of Lachney's burn spells, you know, those Searing Blazes, were hurting Caleb's draw.
Yeah, it provided some real interaction there. Knocked out a Vault Scourge, which Caleb played Phyrexia mana for, and every point counted there at the end.
All right, we're going to go ahead and look at the sideboards. Let's start over on Caleb Scherer's side of Affinity. So he's got a Dismember, a Slaughter Pact, an extra Etched Champion, a Nature's Claim. That one's interesting. Get to that in a sec. Whip Flare, Blood Moon, Spellskite, Hangerback Walker, Girapur, Aether Grid, and Ancient Grudge.
So I'm fine bringing in another copy of Etched Champion. It's the best target for Cranial Plating or Ravager counters. I think the one copy of Whip Flare is fine in this matchup. Grim Lavamancer is a problematic card, so getting that off the table is good for sure. And I love the one copy of Nature's Claim here. I think that Caleb has a pretty big advantage around turn 5 of the game. That's where his resources are likely to overwhelm Burn. And it's totally fine to cash in one of your own artifacts for 4 life.
Yeah, 4 life. I mean, if your opponent's playing Lava Spike, well, Nature's Claim does one-up that. Now, you're mentioning Etched Champion. That makes me think that Donovan is going to be trying to aggressively kill Caleb's creatures if he's looking for something resilient like that.
Yes. Well, you know, you're trying to thread the needle a little bit. You don't want to become a pure control deck because you need to be able to win the game in time, and Affinity eventually overwhelms you, especially when they have Thought Cast in the build. So you do want so you do want to be able to be Lava Spiking a little bit, but the more that you can interact along the way with some Searing Blaze effects, the more that you slow them down and give yourself one extra draw step to be able to find the last piece.
All right, so we look at Lachney's sideboard. It's 2 Atarka's commands, a Relic of Progenitus, a Core Firewalker, 2 Deflecting Palms, 3 Destructive Revelries. That one seems great. 2 Rending Volleys, and then 2 Path to Exiles.
So the 3 copies of Destructive Revelry, those are no-brainers. There's a couple fringe options. I like the 2 copies of Path to Exile in the matchup. They're a little bit worse for Lachney because he's on the pure burn version, and bringing in interaction that doesn't deal damage is a much higher opportunity cost than it is for a deck like Zoo. I also don't mind the 2 copies of Atarka's Command over something like Skullcrack, for example, because Reach is a real thing in the matchup.
Yeah, actually being able to kill a Vault Scourge or a Signal Pest seems pretty relevant.
It comes up very rarely, but Reach is a functional keyword against Affinity because of Ornithopter, because of Vault Scourge, and the propensity with which Cranial Plating goes on those kind of threats because you can block on the ground.
Well, now that we are well into December, that means for those of you, SCG Game Night once again comes out with a new pin and token. We do this every month. For December, it's going to be the Reindeer pin and token. You know, a Caribou just for the Caribou range that you maybe have in your Commander deck or your Casual deck. Good card back from Ice Age. You can get these from playing in a SCG Game Night at a participating store in your area. These are given away as prizes. Can be any night of the week. Next month, if you have playing one, we'll be giving away the Grizzly Brand token. You see that, the 5/5 Demon Bear. And this is one of my favorite ones. In February, we'll be giving away the Magus of the Moo. That's the Minotaur token. So if you want to sign up for these, go ahead and contact us at starcitygames.com/game night to learn more about it. We'll go ahead and back to our match, though. Caleb Scherer now down a game. I feel like on his Invitational Dreams on life support here, but this is something which he's been doing all tournament. Yeah,
there's no way he ran through the 7 rounds unscathed. There's some back against the wall stuff going on the whole time. And the matchup is still solid for him, and it's a matchup where he can break serve, because when he gums up the board, it's very hard for Burn to attack with creatures, and being able to assemble 20 damage via Lava Spikes in time against Affinity is no small task.
We saw a Scry to the bottom there for Caleb. That's because he's on a mulligan to 6. Affinity, though, a deck that does that frequently. But for Lachney, it's a turn 1 Goblin Guide. It'll show Steel Overseer on the top of the deck, so no draw, sure, at 18.
Little surprised to see that card still in the deck post-board. Usually the worst threat, in my opinion at least, that Affinity brings to the table in this matchup.
So the worry would be that it actually won't be able to safely attack?
It's 2 mana and just dies.
Okay.
You know, doesn't impact the board the turn that you play it. Very slow.
So Caleb draws the Steel Overseer for the turn. He goes ahead and plays it off 2 lands, then uses a Springleaf Drum he played turn 1 to go and a Mox Opal to play Spellskite. So what was a slow turn 1 for Caleb is actually shaping up on turn 2.
And depending on the makeup of Lachney's hand, this Spellskite could just be the end of the road. I mean, if you're all on Bolts and Helixes, this card's very challenging to beat.
So that does mean that Caleb actually can't block the Goblin Guide, though.
He can still block it and save the points and absorb a Lightning Bolt if he feels like the leftovers in hand are very good.
It's going to be a second Goblin Guide from Lachney. Well, that's one way to go for it. A pair of Goblin Guide triggers. Well, Arcbound Ravager will be shown twice. And we'll see if Caleb actually blocks. Yeah, he'll block 1 Goblin Guide, take 2, go to 16. See if Lachney has the follow-up Lightning Bolt.
And I like the block there once Ravager's on top of the deck, because even if Lachney can follow up and kill the Spellskite, which is no guarantee he can do, Caleb gets to go untap Ravager, activate Steel Overseer. Next turn, there's no attacking to be done.
And it's going to be Grim Lavamancer as the follow-up for Lachney, not even a Bolt.
Yeah, so great block there by Scherer. Even if Lightning Bolt was the card in question, it wouldn't have mattered all that much. And now with Ravager coming and Spellskite still in play, this is going to be a big challenge.
Dangerous. It's that Arcbound Ravager we saw on top for Caleb. That'll enter the battlefield. The Affinity deck starting to go wide here with 3 creatures. Can be very difficult for Burn to remove this once it gets going.
Well, the way that you beat Arcbound Ravager is with Lava Spikes. But it looks like Lachney's hand's a little light on that sort of stuff. If you're on, this is the problem that I have with the Burn side of the matchup. If you're on creatures and you don't have a lot of removal spells, there's no way you're going to be able to brawl with Affinity. They're faster to you to the ground. Their creatures are bigger. Most of their powers interact inside of combat, making things larger or breaking up your blocks or so forth. You cannot beat this deck brawling on the ground. It's not a path to victory.
Yeah, and it wasn't just one Arcbound Ravager for Caleb. He played one, used Springleaf Drum to cast a second Arcbound Ravager, then Steel Overseer, put counters on everybody, and now we have, what, 6? We have 7 power in play for Caleb, and that's only going to get bigger. And when you look at a board like this, suddenly the Searing Blazes and Lightning Helixes in Lachney's hand, they don't look as good.
And this is the problem in the matchup. Burn has to thread the needle between controlling the board enough to make sure Affinity just doesn't kill them outright in a race, while also having enough Lava Spikes to power through the game once the board gets gummed up. It's very challenging to do both things, and if you fail at either task, you probably lose the game.
And remember, this was a mulligan to 6 for Caleb. He did not get any free cards off the Goblin Guides, but looks like he has stabilized around 16 life.
You know, if your hand's all Lava Spikes, you can get beat in a pure race when they have Cranial Plating or Ravager.
Sure.
If your hand is a bunch of creatures, you can lose games like this, where you have Arcbound Ravager and Spellskite in play, and Lachney has 2/2s with drawbacks on the table.
All right, well, it's going to be Searing Blaze with a land targeting Steel Overseer. Overseer currently a 2/2. Now, Caleb does have Spellskite.
Well, my instinct here in Caleb's position, he's in a strong position to win this game as long as he doesn't get beat by Lava Spikes. My instinct would be just to sacrifice the Steel Overseer to the Arcbound Ravager, not bother paying the 2 life via Spellskite.
Yeah, I mean, there is Grim Lavamancer on the table to finish off the Spellskite.
Exactly, and then you have to make a decision of, are you sacrificing the Ravager to grow Spellskite to be large enough? Maybe you do. Or are you going to go ahead and lose your Spellskite?
So it looks like he'll pay 2 life to redirect to Spellskite. So Spellskite takes 2, Caleb takes 3, he's down to 11. That's a 5-point burn spell for 2.
Yeah, because of Caleb's advantage on the board, like I said, just being on the burn side of the matchup, my biggest fear, if I'm in Lachney's seat, is Caleb just goes, okay, sacrifice the Ravager, I'll take 3.
Now a pair of Goblin Guides swing in. Inkmoth Nexus, so he'll draw a card off the first guide. Will he get a card off the second? He will not, but a Steel Overseer's on top. Remember, there's 3 damage on that Spellskite, so it does complicate the block.
Yeah. And now Caleb is he's kind of forced to make a block here because he certainly can't just let this stuff go through.
Sure. Looks like a Ravager's going to eat Springleaf Drum to put up to a 3/3. Looks like he's planning to block a Goblin Guide with this Ravager.
Yeah. So, you know, Caleb may end up losing his Spellskite anyway and taking a couple more points for his trouble, which is, again, why I would have just sacrificed the Steel Overseer and allowed Lachney to come at me in combat.
Spellskite in front of Goblin Guide and Arcbound Ravager in front of the other. Now, this would kill the Spellskite if it goes through, right?
Well, this is the squeeze that Scherer's put himself into to some extent. He can't let a guide hit come through. Then he's at 9. He's probably a couple turns away from being able to win the game. And then you have to start worrying about Lava Spikes and Boros Charms and Target's Commands and Skull Cracks and things that Spellskite can't redirect, finishing out the game.
Yeah, so it looks like it'll just be 1 block, a Ravager on a Goblin Guide. 2 damage gets through and knocks Caleb down to 9. And you know what? You're bringing me around to your school of thought here. I like Steel Overseer. I really like saving it, but it does feel like Caleb paid 4 extra life points to save that guy. And I don't really want to do that against Burn.
Yeah, and now you're going to see a main phase Lavamancer activation. That's going to put Caleb in another squeeze. It's 2 damage to Caleb guaranteed either way, either via Spellskite redirection or by just allowing the Lavamancer to resolve. If Lachney doesn't die on the way back, he gets to set Caleb down to 7. 7 is Boros Charm plus Lava Spike range. It's any Boros Charm plus 3 damage spell that Spellskite can't redirect now is going to kill Caleb if he can't win the game on the way back.
right, Grim Lavamancer will finish off the Spellskite. Will Caleb save? It looks like he will. He'll go ahead. No, he'll actually use his other Archon Ravager to eat the Spellskite. Surprised. I was actually expecting him to put counters onto Spellskite with that Ravager.
I think at this point I'm probably a little bit more interested in clocking than having the Spellskite in play.
Okay. Draw for the turn was Steel Overseer. We knew about that one from Goblin Guide. Caleb plays the Inkmoth he got. Yeah, well, I guess I was just worried with Caleb at 9. Now that he'd taken so much damage that last turn, I feel unsafe without a Spellskite here.
Well, 9 is still a still a pretty good cushion here.
All right.
Lachney's hand has to be very specific to be able to kill you here. And I think that if Caleb at 9 or Caleb at 7 with a Spellskite, I think he's actually more likely to die at 7 with a Spellskite in play. Because Boros Charm plus a number of cards gets the job done.
Sure. So Caleb counting up, seeing if he can kill this turn. It's going to activate Blinkmoth. I think he might be able to.
So
yeah, cast Steel Overseer. I believe this works.
3 artifacts in play. The Steel Overseer amounts to 3.
Yeah.
4 damage essentially. 8. Yeah, I think he's just got this on the way back.
So activate Steel, the Blinkmoth Nexus. Activate Steel Overseer. So now the Ravagers are both 4s. The Blinkmoth is a 2. That's 10 damage. Well, he may be short 1. We'll see. All right. Ravager and Inkmoth. Both Ravagers and Inkmoth swing. So that's 4, 8, 10 points. He can sacrifice 4 artifacts, but that's still 1 short. No, wait. If he sacks a Ravager to a Ravager, he gets 1 more. So that's actually what he's going to do. So Ravager's up to 5, up to 6, another 6. So it's 2 6/6s and a 2/2. And if you sack a Ravager to another Ravager, you get a 1/1 counter from the sacrifice and all 6 from the modular. So it actually nets yet 1 more damage. So 1 from the sack, 6 from the modular. That's what he's talking through. So it's 4. Wow. So it's 13 off the Ravager, exactly 2 off the Blinkmoth. And Caleb, for exact damage, gets Donovan Lachney.
Yep, and you can see the issue that Burn can have in the matchup when the draw is creature heavy and Affinity gets a Ravager onto the table, it quickly becomes impossible to attack. And you need every point of damage. The other issue in this matchup, and there's no way to fix this, when you're on the Burn side, you're taking 3 to 5 points of damage a game off your lands. Affinity is playing clean off its mana.
Yeah.
And the game is often a race.
So 1 game apiece for these 2 players. We've mentioned it before. Caleb, Scherer, slow start to the day. Both these players looking at 2 wins from top 8. They need this round and the next round. For sure, what a run it would be.
Yeah, I mean, to go from 3-3 and probably just assuming that the Players' Championship was not a reality to, okay, well, I'm 10-3 still live for top 8, and several people that I need to win this tournament are still very much live for the top 8 as well.
Yeah, Caleb said he was dead for Players' Championship. Actually, did say that yesterday, just as a statement of fact. Which doesn't look like a fact anymore.
No.
And so we're going to go to a 3rd game here between Burn and Affinity. Now, when you think about Burn, double Goblin Guide starts, you know, they're among Burn's best draws. But even then, it never felt too close.
No, I mean, a lot of Lachney's resources were on creatures. The creatures are past your opening hand worse than your Lava Spikes. They're much better in your opening hand, but when you draw a guide on turn 3, let's say, there's a very good chance you can convert it into no damage over the course of the game because Affinity is so adept at locking up the ground. So good at chump blocking.
Yeah. So we talked about game night. We also have our fall creature collection that we've been doing. This has been our game night pins throughout the year. So you can see the reindeer we have for December, and we also have the other ones from the fall. That's the hippo and otter. And also our, I'm going to say this one wrong. We're going to go for, what is it? Penguillian Click.
There you go.
All right.
You got it.
Whew. Well, you can get these ones in the Fall 2015 collection on playmat sleeves and in player bundles. We'll have those available through the end of the season. That's going to be at starcitygames.com/creature collection to learn more. We go ahead back to game 3. Donovan Lachney will be on the play again. Now, you'd mentioned him wanting to board out Goblin Guides. Does that change when he's on the play?
Oh, well, I think you need to keep him in regardless, but on the play, yes. I like being as aggressive as possible. I would cut Path to Exile. I would leave in all the Lava Spikes that I could. I don't mind Destructive Revelry in the matchup because that's another Searing Blaze effect, but I am looking to just race. Trying to maintain control of the board against Affinity is almost impossible. All
right, well, that turn 1 Goblin Guide is going to be the play for Lachney. So turn 1 Goblin Guide on the play knocks Caleb down to 18. He did give him an extra land in Inkmoth Nexus. As you go over to Caleb, frequently when you give a player an extra card on turn 1 on the play, they end up discarding. Now, Affinity, not so much.
The Ornithopter, Memnite, Mox,
right.
Vault Scourge, Signal Pest deck, yeah, they're usually not discarding the hand size.
And you see that right there. There's the Inkmoth he gave him. Here's a Welding Jar, a Mox Opal. This is dangerous. When Affinity plays 5 cards on turn 1, I am scared as the burn player.
Yes.
It's like,
yep.
Yeah. 2 Welding Jars. It looks like it's going to be Springleaf Drum. This is a ton of mana. Vault Scourge. So with Vault Scourge and 2 Welding Jars, that guy's not going anywhere unless there's a Path to Exile.
Well, the upshot is Vault Scourge is only 1 point of damage a turn. And
sure.
You can mitigate it to some extent if you have Skullcracks in your deck. The fear here, if you're Lachney, is Cranial Plating or Arcbound Ravager, and there's no way to race.
Yeah, if a planing goes on the Vault Scourge, it just doesn't feel like the fight's fair. We go back over to Lachney's hand. Good draw, drew Atarka's Command. That one was out of the sideboard. You see he also has Monastery Swift Spear available. Now, I'm not sure he has a second land.
And I think that I would have preferred a slightly different path from Scherer here, because he is risking a little bit in terms of removal. I think I would have preferred just to go Jar, Mox, Land, Ravager, Pass, then next turn, dump out a bunch of creatures.
Sure.
Unless the intent here is simply to load up on the Vault Scourge next turn.
And this is a big stumble for Lachney. So he swung the Goblin Guide. The reveal was Ornithopter. Caleb went to 14, but Lachney, no second land. His whole turn was suspending Rift Bolt. And the comeback could be real big here from Scherer. Plays a second Inkmoth Nexus. Here's an Ornithopter. We knew about that one. Remaining hand, looks like it's Ravager and Etched Champion.
Pretty much perfect.
Vault Scourge will swing. No pumps on it, so it's just going to be 1. Donovan down to 17. Caleb, it takes a little bump up to 15. But a follow-up here. He's got 4 mana available, so can go for either of his plays. And he has to pick between the 2. They both are looking pretty good. And I believe it's going to be the Etched Champion, so he'll have a blocker at the ready for Goblin Guide. Does that and a pass. Rift Bolt comes off suspend with 2 Welding Jars in play. I'm not sure he has many options as to where this can go.
Can't maintain the board. I think he's just got to go straight upstairs. Slogging through these Welding Jars, I think there's no way Lachney's going to have enough resources to answer the Welding Jars, get the Vault Scourge off the table, and then come up with 15 points of burn on top.
Draw for the turn was another Rift Bolt. You're right, Lachney pointed it at the Vault Scourge, but that didn't kill the Vault Scourge. It got a Welding Jar from Caleb.
I understand it's desperate times, you know. You don't feel good trying to bolt Scherer down to 12 when he's got a Vault Scourge in play, but I think the ship has sailed on trying to get Vault Scourge off the table because of the Welding Jars. There's no way to do all of it.
And the follow-up here from Lachney seems more like a whimper than a show of strength. No attacks from Goblin Guide. Suspend another Rift Bolt past the turn. Well, it looked like it. I mean, his start had a lot of high upside, right? A turn 1 Goblin Guide with Monastery Swift Spear. A lot of things can go well here, but missing a second land. And with Caleb's drop, maybe none of it mattered in the first place.
And I think we've actually gotten to a point here where if Scherer can get a bunch of counters onto the Etched Champion and maintain Metalcraft, that it's just a lock.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of right he can do that. He's almost to the point where he can throw counters onto an Inkmoth. See, Ravager was the play from Scherer. Here's a swing with Scourge and Etched Champion. Well, can't be any blocks from Lachney, so he'll go to 14. Scherer up to 16.
Yeah, I think there might have been a way for Scherer to just...
To win that turn?
Not win that turn, but basically shove a bunch of stuff onto the Edge Champion to set up a kill over the course of this turn and next.
Right, so once you get an 8/8 Metal-crafted Edge Champion, you're saying there's just no way for Burn to ever remove it or block it or do anything?
It has to involve something like removing Metalcraft and then having a path. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, makes sense. And off 1 mana, I don't see it.
Sure, is so far ahead that you know he can afford to play conservatively, but I have been locked by Edge Champion enough to know that if you can establish Metalcraft, there's just no way to get this thing off the table once it grows past 2/2.
Upkeep Rift Bolt will be pointed at Arcbound Ravager. It's not going to kill it though. Scherer will bin 3 artifacts to keep him alive. Draw for Lachney was an Eidolon. And with a hand of uncastables, this really should do it. It's got a Swift Spear, I guess, and a Lightning Bolt that he can still play. Lachney will swing Goblin Guide. That shows Darksteel Citadel. That goes into Caleb's hand. He'll take 2, but he's been gaining life off Vault Scourge, so 14 still a healthy life total. And 14 apiece. We look at Lachney. What can he put together? He will bolt to try to finish off that Arcbound Ravager. Interesting to see how Caleb wants to play this. He can save it. He could throw all the counters onto something else.
I think the easiest thing is just to keep feeding the Ravager.
It's pretty safe.
Doesn't really matter all that much.
So he will use Springleaf Drum to activate Inkmoth. Sacrifice Inkmoth to the Ravager. Now it's a 5/5. Remember, it has 3 damage on it from the Rift Bolt at the moment. Sacrificing Drum will make it a 6/6.
Yeah, Caleb doesn't even need to push beyond this point. He can simply let the Ravager die at 6, and that way he can move everything onto the Edge Champion and still have Metalcraft available.
Well, it looks like this is a show of strength. He'll sacrifice Vault Scourge to make it a 7/7. So, Lightning Bolt resolves, but it doesn't kill Ravager. And Caleb untaps his board as a 7/7 Ravager and an Edge Champion. So he will activate Inkmoth, make Ravager an 8/8, make Ravager a 9/9, make Inkmoth a 10/10.
Gut shot! Gut shot! All right, fine.
There's a welding jar in play. He didn't sack the jar.
And then you untap, you path, and you're good.
Well, you didn't path. You untap, but then Caleb can't activate.
Yeah.
He can't activate it again.
Gut shot, man. Would have been a good spot. Wasn't meant to be.
So there you have it, Caleb. That would have, boy, would have that.